Hello, everyone. I am the sleep storyteller, and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a lot. Also, let me know in the comments, where are you from and what time are you listening? Now get comfortable and relax beneath a vast sky painted in soft hues of violet and gold, where the air shimmered with unseen magic. A legend was whispered through time. It spoke of a creature unlike any other, a being of flame and renewal, bound to neither life nor death, but something beyond, something eternal. This was the phoenix, a bird of fire and song, whose presence marked the turning of fate, whose very essence defied the boundaries that governed all other things. It was not a creature to be summoned, nor a beast to be tamed. It did not roam in flocks, nor did it answer to any master. A phoenix came only to those it deemed worthy, drawn not by command, but by something unspoken, something deep within the soul. In lands forgotten by time, in ancient temples where stone crumbled beneath the weight of history, wizards and witches of old sought the phoenix, believing it to be the key to immortality. They scoured the earth, followed whispers in the wind, and searched for embers left behind in the wake of its flight. Yet no spell, no incantation, no act of sheer will could bring it forth. It was said that the phoenix chose when to appear, and to whom, as if it moved by a force unknown even to the most learned of magical scholars. And when it did, it was not merely a visitor, it was a sign that something was about to change. Legends of the phoenix spanned continents and centuries. The Egyptians, great masters of the arcane, inscribed its image in gold, believing it to be a messenger of Ra, the sun god. In the darkened halls of medieval alchemists, the phoenix became a symbol of transformation, the very essence of rebirth and eternity. Even muggles, who lived in ignorance of true magic, spun their own tales, painting the phoenix as a bird of fire, rising anew from its own destruction. But what they did not know, what even some wizards failed to understand, was that the phoenix was not merely a creature of myth. It was real, it was alive, and it watched over the world in ways unseen. Unlike dragons, whose power lay in their might, or unicorns, whose purity was their gift, the phoenix possessed magic that was neither violent nor gentle, but something deeper. It could heal with its tears, restoring life to the brink of death. Its song could inspire courage in the hearts of the noble, yet strike fear into those with wicked intent. It burned in flames of crimson and gold, only to be reborn from its own ashes, never aging, never fatting, never truly dying. To witness a phoenix's rebirth was to witness the very cycle of existence, the endless balance of endings and beginnings, destruction and renewal. But there was one mystery that no wizard, no scholar, no seeker of truth had ever unraveled. Where did the phoenix come from? No nest had ever been found, no egg ever hatched before the eyes of man. Some believed they simply appeared when the world needed them, conjured by the very forces of magic itself. Others theorized that when one phoenix perished, another rose elsewhere, ensuring that their numbers never grew nor declined. Whatever the truth, it remained beyond reach, a question left unanswered by the very nature of the creature itself. There were whispers of those who had been chosen, rare souls who had formed a bond with a phoenix, not by force, not by summoning, but by something deeper, an unspoken understanding between two beings of magic. The greatest of them all was Albus Dumbledore, a wizard of unmatched wisdom, who walked the halls of Hogwarts with a silent guardian by his side. His phoenix, Fawkes, was no pet, no mere companion. He was a protector, a witness to history, a creature of fate itself. His feathers, taken long ago, had been woven into two wands, twin cores, that would shape the destiny of the wizarding world. And yet, even Dumbledore, with all his knowledge, never claimed to own Fawkes. For a phoenix could never be owned. It could only choose to stay. The Ministry of Magic, in all its bureaucracy, had tried to classify the phoenix as they did all magical creatures, placing it under their careful watch, listing it among beings of interest. But the phoenix paid no mind to such things. It could not be tracked, nor contained, nor studied as one might a dragon or a basilisk. It existed beyond the reach of laws and limitations, answering only to the silent call of destiny. It was said that when a phoenix departed, it left no trace, no footprints, no feathers to be collected. It simply vanished into legend, waiting for the next moment, the next soul, the next turning of fate. And so the phoenix remained an enigma, a force of magic untamed, a creature of myth that lived beyond myth. It was fire and renewal, wisdom and mystery. It did not seek power. It did not linger where it was not needed. It simply was, rising and falling, burning and being born anew, forever bound to the cycles of the world. Somewhere in the quiet corners of the earth, beneath the watchful stars and the whispering winds, a phoenix stirred. Perhaps it watched, perhaps it waited, and perhaps, when the time was right, when fate wove its invisible threads once more, it would appear again, its wings aflame, its song echoing through the air, heralding a new beginning. The wind carried whispers of old magic through the trees, rustling the leaves like murmured secrets. Somewhere beyond the reach of ordinary sight, where the world folded into the unseen, a phoenix took flight. Its wings, veiled in gold and crimson, cut through the air like fire given form. There was no destination, no path it followed, and yet it moved with purpose, as if drawn by the silent threads of fate. It was said that the phoenix did not choose at random. When it appeared, it was a sign of change, a turning point in the great, unseen tapestry of magic that bound all things together. Wizards and witches spoke of such moments in hushed voices of the times when a phoenix arrived not as a mere creature, but as an omen. To those with courage, it brought hope. To those with darkness in their hearts, it was a warning. And to all, it was a mystery. For centuries, scholars had tried to track its kind, but none had ever succeeded. the phoenix was immune to being caught, its very nature defying the laws of captivity. If placed within a cage, it would vanish in a burst of flame, slipping through space itself. If marked with a magical trace, the spell would simply fade, as if the bird existed outside of time. It had no recorded breeding grounds, no known method of reproduction, and yet it endured unchanging, untouched by the centuries that weighed upon all other things. Some believed that there were not many phoenixes, but only one, that it was a single entity reborn again and again, never truly perishing. Others argued that the phoenix was not a species at all, but a manifestation of magic itself, appearing when called upon by forces beyond human understanding. Whatever the truth, it remained unknowable. The phoenix did not reveal its secrets. It simply existed as it always had, as it always would. There were those, however, who had glimpsed its power. Albus Dumbledore, the only wizard known to have shared a bond with a phoenix, had never spoken of how he and Fawkes first met. It was not a story written in books, nor a tale he shared even with those closest to him. But it was known that Fawkes had come to him not as a servant, not as a pet, but as an equal. Their connection was one of trust, of mutual understanding, something beyond the ordinary relationships between wizards and magical creatures. Fawkes had fought beside him in battles unseen, had healed wounds that might have otherwise been fatal, had stood as a silent guardian through decades of war and peace. He was more than a companion. He was a witness to history itself. When Dumbledore walked the halls of Hogwarts, he did so with the quiet presence of a being older than time itself. And when he fell, when the greatest wizard of his age breathed his last, the song of the phoenix filled the air with sorrow, a lament so deep that it carried through the castle like the final whisper of something ancient and eternal. And then Fawkes was gone. He did not linger at Hogwarts. He did not seek another master. He simply vanished, as all phoenixes did when their purpose had been fulfilled. Some believed he returned to the hidden places of the world, where no wizard's eyes could follow. Others wondered if he still watched, waiting for the moment when he would be needed once more. But the truth was simple. When a phoenix departs, it leaves no trace. It is a guardian of fate, appearing and disappearing as it chooses, bound not to the world of men, but to something greater. Yet, while Fawkes himself was gone, a part of him remained. 2 of his feathers had been given long ago, woven into the cores of 2 wands, destined to shape the course of history. One belonged to Harry Potter, the boy marked by prophecy, a wizard who had unknowingly carried the magic of the phoenix from the moment he first held his wand. The other belonged to Tom Riddle, Lord Voldemort, whose own path had been forever tied to that same fire. It was no coincidence that these wands, created from the same source, had found themselves locked in battle time and time again. The phoenix was a creature of renewal, but also of balance. It did not take sides. It did not wage war. And yet, its influence had tipped the scales of fate in ways no wizard could ever truly comprehend. During their duels, the wands had rebelled against one another, refusing to destroy their twin. When Voldemort had struck down Harry, it was Phoenix magic, ancient, untamed, and beyond all human spells, that had acted in defiance of death. And when Harry's wand shattered Voldemort's borrowed one in midair, unleashing a golden flame that had burned with the same brilliance as a phoenix's own rebirth, it had been something beyond ordinary magic. Ollivander, the great wand maker, had spoken of phoenix feather wands as the most independent of all. They did not simply obey their owners. They chose them, and they acted not just on command, but on something deeper, a force older than spellwork, older than wizard kind itself. In the hands of those unworthy, a phoenix feather wand would resist, refusing to be a mere instrument of destruction. But in the hands of one who carried both courage and destiny, it would awaken, revealing power beyond measure. And so, even with Fawkes gone, his fire still burned in the wands that had shaped the wizarding world. His magic, his essence, his gift of renewal, none of it had been lost. The phoenix, after all, was never truly gone. It simply waited beyond sight, beyond time, until the world called for it once more, somewhere in a place untouched by human hands. A single ember glowed in the darkness. It pulsed, slow and steady, a quiet heartbeat of warmth amidst the cold. And then, with a flicker, with the soft whisper of a flame returning to life, it stirred. Perhaps the phoenix had not vanished forever. Perhaps it was only waiting to rise again. The ember flickered in the darkness, pulsing like a heartbeat, waiting to bloom into fire once more. The phoenix did not perish. It never had, never would. Instead, it rested in the in-between, in the hush of time itself, until the moment came for it to rise again. Somewhere, beyond the reach of human eyes, beneath a sky untouched by mortal hands, a new cycle had begun. In the quiet corners of the world, where the magic of old still lingered, whispers of the phoenix's return stirred the air. There were those who believed that a phoenix did not simply vanish, but withdrew, slipping into the hidden threads of fate, waiting for the call of something greater. It was said that they could feel the changes before they arrived, sensing the shifting of magic like the first tremors before a storm. And when they returned, it was not a gentle arrival. It was fire. It was song. It was the burning of the old to make way for the new. The ancient texts spoke of phoenixes appearing in times of great turmoil, their presence marking moments of transformation. They were not creatures of war, nor did they serve as weapons, yet their arrival always signified a turning point. Their fire did not destroy, it cleansed. Their song did not command, it guided. And their tears, rare and precious beyond measure, carried the power to mend wounds no other magic could heal. Wizards had spent centuries attempting to understand the phoenix, but the truth had always remained just beyond their reach. The Ministry of Magic, despite all its regulations and classifications, had failed to contain even the knowledge of the creature. The greatest magizoologists had never uncovered the secrets of their origins. Theories rose and fell like shifting tides. Some claimed the phoenix was the embodiment of magic itself, while others insisted they were eternal beings, neither born nor dying, but existing in an endless loop of rebirth. What was known, however, was that no phoenix had ever been found in the wild. No nest had ever been uncovered. No fledgling had ever been seen. They came when they were needed, appearing as if summoned by forces unseen, and departed just as mysteriously. Even those rare few who had been chosen by a phoenix, Dumbledore among them, knew better than to claim ownership. A phoenix was never truly possessed, never bound by wand or spell. It came of its own will, and when it left, it did so without looking back. And yet, despite its elusiveness, its presence in the wizarding world had shaped history in ways most would never fully understand. In the depths of the Chamber of Secrets, a phoenix's cry had turned the tide of fate. When all hope had seemed lost, when the shadow of death loomed in the form of the basilisk, it was Fawkes who had answered the silent call of destiny. His song, haunting and ethereal, had filled the chamber with something beyond words: courage, hope, defiance. His talons had struck true, blinding the monster that had lurked beneath Hogwarts for centuries. And his tears had saved the life of the one who would one day stand against the darkest wizard the world had ever known. It had been no accident. Fawkes had come not because he was commanded, nor because he had been trained to obey. He had appeared because he had chosen to, because something beyond spells and incantations had drawn him there. And in doing so, he had altered the course of history. Even Voldemort, in all his arrogance, had come to fear the phoenix, not for its fire, not for its song, but for what it represented: rebirth, renewal, the power to rise again, no matter how many times one had fallen. He, who had spent a lifetime evading death, who had torn his soul apart in his pursuit of immortality, could not control the phoenix. It was a creature that defied the very thing he feared most, a being that did not seek to conquer death, but embraced it as part of an eternal cycle. The irony was not lost on those who knew the truth, that the wands of both Harry Potter and Voldemort had been bound by the same phoenix, their fates intertwined by the very magic that the Dark Lord sought to dominate. The twin wands, crafted from Fawkes' feathers, had recognized each other, rebelled against one another, and in the end had played a role in the downfall of the one who had sought to rule through fear and destruction. The phoenix did not take sides. It was neither good nor evil. It simply was. Yet time and again, it appeared when the world stood on the brink of change, when the balance of magic wavered, when the old had to burn away to make room for the new. And now, in the quiet of the unseen world, in a place where no wizard had ever walked, the embers of a phoenix stirred once more. A faint glow pulsed beneath a sky heavy with the weight of something unspoken. The fire had not gone out, it had merely slumbered. And soon, when the moment was right, it would rise again. For that was the way of the phoenix. It would always rise. The ember pulsed, slow and steady, like the breath of something timeless. Beneath the unseen veil of the world, where magic hummed in the silence, the phoenix stirred. It had been waiting, resting within the cycle that had existed long before wizards had named it, long before spells had been carved into the fabric of the universe. Then, with a whisper of heat, with a flicker of something ancient awakening, the ember burst into flame. For the phoenix, death was never an end. It was a passage, a threshold crossed not with sorrow, but with certainty. Fire consumed its form, swallowing feather and bone in a radiant blaze. The air shimmered with golden light, bright as the heart of the sun, before fatting into soft embers. And from the ashes, delicate and fragile, yet impossibly alive, a new form emerged. A single, small wing stretched from the remains, damp with the remnants of rebirth, quivering as new life awakened. The phoenix chick, though fresh from the fire, carried no memory of weakness. There was no fear, no hesitation. It knew what it was, what it had always been. It had returned, far from the eyes of men, in a place where time did not weigh as it did elsewhere. The young phoenix took its first breath, shaking the last flecks of ash from its wings. The warmth of renewal flowed through its tiny body, the same warmth that had once filled the chambers of Hogwarts, that had turned the tide of battle, that had woven itself into the very wands that had shaped a war. This fire, this life, was old magic that could not be bound, could not be controlled. Somewhere in the world, the echo of its rebirth sent ripples through unseen currents. A subtle shift in the air, a whisper in the threads of fate. The phoenix did not call for attention, but its presence was felt, like the first light before dawn. And though no wizard knew it, yet, the return of the phoenix meant that something was coming. In the halls of history, the phoenix had always appeared when the world stood at a crossroads, when the darkness of tyranny loomed, when the balance of magic trembled, when a choice had to be made. It did not come to fight, nor to rule. It came to bear witness, to guide, to remind the world that even in destruction, there was renewal. But few understood this truth. The Ministry of Magic, even with its endless records and regulations, had failed to grasp the phoenix's purpose. They had tried to classify it, to define it, to fit it into the constraints of magical law. But the phoenix did not answer to laws, nor to the will of men. It moved beyond the reach of documentation, beyond the pages of fantastic beasts and where to find them. Scholars had speculated, debated, written entire volumes on its existence, and yet they knew nothing. For how could one understand what could not be held? Even those who had been chosen by a phoenix never claimed to own them. Dumbledore, who had spent a lifetime beside Fawkes, never sought to command him. The great wizard had known the truth that Fawkes was not his to keep, not his to summon at will. He had come because he had chosen to, and he had left for the same reason. And when he had gone, he had taken more than his presence with him. Those who had been at Hogwarts the night Dumbledore fell had heard it, the song of the phoenix, a sound so filled with sorrow that it had echoed through the stone corridors like a farewell beyond words. It had been mourning, yes, but not in the way humans grieved. The phoenix did not mourn death as an end, but as a passing into something new. And so, when Fawkes had sung his last song for his master, he had not remained. He had left behind only silence and the question of where he had gone. Some believed he had sought another worthy of his presence, another wizard or witch who carried the same strength of heart. Others thought he had returned to the unknown places where phoenixes dwelled, slipping beyond the reach of history once more. But the truth was simpler. Fawkes had left because his purpose had been fulfilled. And now, as the embers of a new phoenix glowed once more in the unseen world, the cycle began again. Would it return to the halls of Hogwarts, where its kind had once stood watch? Or would it fly elsewhere, to another place, another time, where its presence was needed? No one could say. The phoenix did not reveal its path, not even to those who longed to understand it. But one thing was certain. When it did return, the world would know, for the rise of the phoenix was never silent. It was fire. It was song. It was a promise that even in the darkest of nights, the dawn would always come. The fire had faded, leaving only the soft glow of embers, pulsing like distant stars. From the ashes, the phoenix stretched its fragile wings, shaking off the remnants of its rebirth. It was young once more, yet it carried no memory of weakness, only the certainty of what it had always been. There was no hesitation, no fear, only the quiet knowledge that its time had come again, somewhere beyond the reach of mortal eyes, beneath skies that had not yet been touched by dawn. The phoenix took flight. The air shimmered in its wake, the warmth of its presence lingering like the final glow of a dying sun. It was unseen by the world, yet the world would feel it, an unseen shift, an echo of something ancient stirring once more. For centuries, the phoenix had risen at moments when magic itself seemed to waver, when the balance of light and darkness teetered on the edge of change. It did not choose sides, nor did it interfere with the will of men. But its presence alone was enough to turn the tide of fate. It was not a creature of war, yet in times of battle, it had appeared. It was not a creature of healing, yet in moments of despair, its tears had saved lives that might have otherwise been lost. It did not seek power, yet its fire had burned through history, leaving its mark upon the world in ways even the greatest of wizards could not fully comprehend. And so, as it flew through the unseen currents of the world, the phoenix did not question where it was going. It did not wonder why it had returned. It simply moved, guided by forces that only it could understand. Far below, in the world of men, where magic wove itself into the fabric of life, the echoes of its rebirth had already begun to take shape. The phoenix did not announce its return, yet those attuned to magic could feel it, a shift in the air, a pulse in the unseen forces that bound all things together. Perhaps there were wizards who, at that very moment, paused in their work, feeling an unfamiliar warmth without knowing why. Perhaps somewhere, deep in the corridors of Hogwarts, a candle flickered without wind, its flame standing a little taller, as if sensing something it could not name. Magic had always recognized the Phoenix, just as the Phoenix had always known magic. And there were those who still remembered the last one who had walked beside such a creature. Dumbledore. His name, even now, lingered in the halls of history like the final note of a song that had never truly faded. He had been many things: a teacher, a scholar, a warrior in the battle against the darkness. But above all, he had been a man who understood the deep, unspoken truths of magic, and Fawkes had chosen him. Even among the greatest of wizards, that choice had been rare. The Phoenix did not form bonds lightly, nor did it stay where it was not needed. Dumbledore had never summoned Fawkes, never claimed to own him. He had simply known that the bird would come when the time was right, and that when it was time for him to leave, he would go without hesitation. It had always been that way. No Phoenix had ever stayed forever, and yet the legacy of its presence had remained, woven into the very fabric of the wizarding world. 2 feathers, taken from Fawkes long before he had vanished, had been crafted into twin wands, one destined for a boy marked by fate, the other for a dark lord who sought to defy death itself. The magic of the Phoenix had bound them together in ways neither had fully understood. It had rebelled against Voldemort, had answered the silent call of Harry Potter, had ensured that in the end it would be the fire of rebirth, not destruction, that prevailed. The Phoenix had never fought in wars. It had never cast spells or wielded wands. Yet time and time again, its presence had shifted the course of history. And now, after so many years, after so much had passed, it had returned. Would it seek out another worthy of its presence? Would it fly once more to Hogwarts, where its kind had once stood watch? Or would it remain unseen, waiting for the moment when it would be needed again? The Phoenix did not question. It did not doubt. It simply was. And as it soared through the unseen spaces of the world, its song began to rise, a melody older than time, carrying with it the promise that no darkness could last forever, that even in the depths of despair, there would always be a light waiting to be reborn. The song of the Phoenix was unlike any other sound in the world. It did not rise in sudden bursts like the cries of ordinary birds, nor did it echo with the weight of sorrow or longing. It was steady, warm, and impossibly ancient, a melody that seemed to weave itself into the very fabric of existence. It was neither loud nor soft, neither commanding nor pleading. It simply was a sound that carried the weight of centuries, of rebirth after rebirth, of a creature that had never truly known an ending. As it flew, its wings spread wide. The embers of its rebirth still glowed faintly beneath its golden feathers. Though fresh from the flames, there was no uncertainty in its flight. The Phoenix did not struggle, did not learn as lesser creatures did. It remembered, not in the way wizards clung to their pasts, but but in a way that transcended memory itself. It knew what it had been before, what it was now, and what it would become again when the time came. Far below, the world turned, unaware of the quiet force moving above it. But in some places, in some hearts, there was a feeling, unspoken, indescribable, but real. There were witches and wizards who, at that very moment, paused without knowing why, feeling a shift in the air. Some felt a warmth bloom in their chests, subtle but unmistakable, as if something unseen had passed by them. Others felt an odd clarity in their thoughts, as though a fog they hadn't even known was there had begun to lift. These were the moments when magic itself responded, when the unseen forces that bound the world together trembled, ever so slightly, at the presence of something greater than themselves. At Hogwarts, deep within the castle's winding corridors, a candle flickered. Not because of wind, there was none, but because the air itself had changed, as if stirred by an invisible wingbeat. The castle, ancient and filled with its own kind of magic, seemed to sense the shift. The phoenix had returned. Though unseen, though unknown to the world of men, it was there. Its fire had shaped history before, in ways that few truly understood. There had been moments, quiet but powerful, where the phoenix's influence had changed everything. It had been there when Harry Potter had stood against the basilisk, its song wrapping around him like armor, filling him with courage when he should have known only fear. Its tears had healed what no other magic could, turning a fatal wound into nothing more than a memory. And when the greatest battle of the age had been fought, the magic of the phoenix had already played its part, woven into the very wands that had determined the outcome. Even now, its presence lingered in those wands, in the twin cores taken from Fawkes so long ago. Though separated, though wielded by hands that had once been enemies, they remained bound by the same fire, by the same creature that had always existed beyond the reach of time. And as the phoenix flew, its song carried through the spaces between worlds, reaching places where no spell could go. Would it return to the halls of Hogwarts, where its kind had once been known? Would it seek another, as it had sought Dumbledore before? Or would it remain a mystery, a legend that whispered through history without ever truly revealing itself? The phoenix did not ask these questions. It simply flew. It would know when the time was right, for the phoenix did not come when it was expected. It came when it was needed, and somewhere beyond the reach of those who still remembered its name, beyond the echoes of the past, a new fire waited to be kindled. The night stretched wide beneath the phoenix's wings, a vast ocean of darkness, pierced only by the distant shimmer of stars. It moved through the sky as if it belonged to something greater than mere flight, carried not by wind, but by an unseen force that guided it beyond the reach of ordinary creatures. The phoenix had no need for direction, no need for hesitation. It simply followed the silent call of fate, the pull of something unspoken, something ancient. Far below, the world continued on, unaware of the fire that had returned to it. Wizards and witches moved through their lives. Spells were cast, lessons were learned, and stories were told of things long past. But none yet knew that the phoenix had risen once more. Yet in certain places, there were signs. At Hogwarts, a place where magic ran deeper than stone, the castle itself seemed to sense something shifting. The enchanted suits of armor, long silent in their watch, stood a little straighter, as if listening for something just beyond hearing. The torches lining the great hall burned a little brighter, their flames steadier, as if touched by a warmth unseen. And in the stillness of the headmaster's office, where once a crimson and gold bird had perched, the air carried the faintest trace of something that had not been there before, a whisper of old magic, a memory waiting to return. Even the forbidden forest, home to creatures both wondrous and terrible, seemed to pause. Deep within its shadows, centaurs lifted their heads to the sky, their silver eyes reflecting the stars as they murmured among themselves. They had long studied the signs, the shifting of the heavens, the patterns that wove through time like threads in a great unseen tapestry. And now, there was something new, something old, yet new once more. The phoenix had never truly belonged to Hogwarts, nor to any wizard, no matter how great. But it had left its mark there, in ways that even time could not erase. The world of wizards had tried, again and again, to understand the phoenix. But it was not a creature that could be studied in the way dragons were, nor could it be tamed like hippogriffs. It was not bound by the rules of nature as men knew them. It did not follow the cycle of life and death as other living things did. It burned, it faded, it was reborn, and through it all, it remained beyond reach. Some believed there were many phoenixes, scattered across the hidden corners of the world, appearing when needed and vanishing when their purpose was fulfilled. Others believed there was only ever one, a single eternal being, passing through time in an endless cycle, reborn again and again, watching history unfold with eyes that had seen the rise and fall of ages. No one knew the truth, but all who had encountered the phoenix knew one thing when it came. It was never by accident. It had come to Dumbledore in a time of change, not to serve him, but to stand beside him. It had come to Harry Potter in a moment of need, not as a savior, but as a reminder that courage was never truly alone. And now, as its wings cut through the night, as its song drifted through the spaces between the seen and unseen, it was moving towards something once more. What that was, only the phoenix knew. Would it return to Hogwarts, to the place where its fire had burned before? Would it seek out another soul worthy of its presence, drawn once more to a heart filled with courage? Or would it vanish again, disappearing into legend, waiting for the next great turning of the world? The phoenix did not ask these questions. It simply flew, carried by the knowledge that when the moment came, when the fire was needed again, it would know. For that was the way of the phoenix. It did not arrive when called. It arrived when the world was ready. The phoenix flew on, a silent ember against the vast stretch of the heavens. The stars above seemed to flicker in response, as if they, too, felt the shift in magic that its return had brought. Below, the world remained unaware of its presence, but the unseen threads of fate had already begun to weave themselves anew. The phoenix had always been a creature of change, a harbinger of transformation, though never in ways that mortals could predict. It did not bring war, nor did it wield power in the way wizards sought to. And yet, wherever it appeared, history shifted. The course of events bent around it, not because it commanded them, but because its presence alone was enough to alter destiny. It had done so before. It had sung in the Chamber of Secrets, wrapping its melody around the heart of a frightened boy, filling him with courage when all hope seemed lost. It had shed its tears over a mortal wound, healing with a magic that even the most skilled wizards could not replicate. It had brought a sword hidden within an old hat, delivering the means to slay a beast that should have been unstoppable. All of this, and yet, the phoenix had not fought. It had not cast spells or wielded weapons. It had simply been there, and that had been enough to change everything. And now it had risen again. The warmth of its rebirth had already begun to ripple through the unseen forces of the world. Somewhere in the halls of Hogwarts, a book fell from its shelf with no cause, its pages fluttering open as if stirred by a breath of wind. In the forbidden forest, the centaurs whispered among themselves, their silver eyes filled with quiet understanding. And in places long untouched by time, old enchantments trembled, as if sensing something they had not felt in an age. The phoenix did not seek recognition. It did not crave acknowledgement, but magic itself responded to its presence, just as the tide responded to the moon. Would it return to those who had known it before? Would it return to Hogwarts, where its song had once echoed through the stone corridors, where it had perched upon the shoulder of a man who had understood its nature better than any wizard before him? Or was it bound for somewhere else entirely, drawn to a place where its fire was needed once more? The phoenix did not wonder. It did not hesitate. It simply flew, and as it moved through the sky, a single ember drifted from the tips of its golden wings, spiraling downward like a falling star. Where it would land, only time would tell. The ember drifted through the night, its glow soft and steady, carrying with it the quiet promise of something yet to come. Below, the world remained unaware, untouched by the fire that had returned to it. And yet, the phoenix knew, just as it always had, that change was stirring, as inevitable as the cycle of its own rebirth. The phoenix did not question its path. It did not wonder where it belonged, for it belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. It was a creature unbound by the laws of time, slipping through history like a whisper of flame, appearing only when the moment demanded it. And now, as it soared through the sky, its wings casting faint streaks of gold against the darkness, it felt the pull of something unseen, something waiting. Perhaps it was destiny, Perhaps it was something even older, but the phoenix did not seek to understand, for understanding was a burden carried by men. It simply was, and so it moved, unseen, yet ever felt, its presence stirring the currents of magic in ways that even the most skilled wizards could not perceive. Far below, in the places where magic was woven into stone and sky, there were those who sensed it without knowing why. A young witch, far from the great halls of Hogwarts, paused mid-spell, the warmth in her chest unfamiliar but comforting. An old wizard, lost in thought, looked up from his books, suddenly aware of the silence around him, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Somewhere, in a quiet house filled with memories, a wand hummed faintly in its owner's grasp, as if recognizing something beyond sight. These moments, fleeting and fragile, were the only signs that the phoenix had risen once more. It did not need fanfare. It did not seek adoration. Its power lay not in spectacle, but in certainty. It had returned because it was meant to. But where would it go? Would it find its way back to the place where its fire had burned before? Would it return to the halls of Hogwarts, where once it had perched in silent vigil over a wizard who had understood it better than any before him? Would it seek another, as it had sought Dumbledore, as it had chosen to appear before Harry Potter in his time of need? Or would it remain unseen, its presence known only in the quiet moments between fate's turning pages? The phoenix did not ask these questions. It simply flew on, carried by the knowledge that it would know when the time was right. For the phoenix did not arrive when it was expected. It arrived when it was needed. The phoenix soared higher, its golden wings cutting through the dark like streaks of fire against an endless sky. The world below remained unaware, untouched by the quiet power of its return. Yet, in places where magic ran deep, the unseen ripples of its presence had already begun to take shape. It had always been this way. The phoenix did not seek attention. It did not call upon wizards or wait for a master's hand. It was a creature of its own will, guided by forces older than spells, older than time itself. And when it appeared, it was not by chance. It was because something was about to change. Far below, in the halls of Hogwarts, the torches burned just a little brighter, their flames steady and warm. The castle, alive with its own ancient magic, seemed to hold its breath, sensing the presence of something it had once known well. Deep within the forbidden forest, the centaurs gazed upward, their silver eyes reflecting the unseen fire that moved beyond their sight. They did not speak, for there was no need. The stars had already told them what they needed to know. The phoenix had returned, but where it would go next, only it knew. Would it once more take its place upon a familiar perch, in the quiet office where its song had once filled the air with hope? Would it come to another, someone new, someone whose heart burned with the same quiet fire that had once drawn it to Dumbledore? Or would it remain unseen, waiting once more letting the world turn until the time was right. The phoenix did not wonder. It simply flew, its path unwritten, its future known only to the great, unseen forces that had always guided it. And as it moved, the world carried on, unaware that history was shifting once more. For that was the way of the phoenix. It did not seek power. It did not linger where it was not needed. It simply was, eternal, untamed, and ever-burning. Somewhere beneath a sky heavy with the weight of stars, its song rose again, soft but steady, a promise carried through the night. A promise that no darkness could last forever. A promise that the fire would always rise again.